Hey everyone, this is Allan McKay and welcome to episode 24. I'm interviewing Saul Rodgers. He's an authority on virtual reality and we get into lots of really cool stuff to do with VR in production. So let's get in there.
Welcome to the Allan McKay podcast. Allan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Allan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Allan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on allanmckay.com.
Alrighty, so I'm talking with Saul Rodgers. Saul's a buddy of mine I've known for quite a long time. He's just a really awesome guy and also a massive authority when it comes to virtual reality. He's worked on lots of really high-profile productions utilizing a lot of this technology, and this was really educational to me. I love the idea of virtual reality. I don't know that much about the ins and outs behind the scenes on it. And I would love to get your take on this, and if this is something that does interest a lot of you, then there's a few other guys from Oculus Rift I'd love to talk to. But this episode is really fun. We go into a lot of using virtual reality, the different types out there, a lot of the technology, a lot of really cool insight into the productions behind it. Now, in addition to that, we also talk about the actual business side and production side of it, which I think is really cool to see where it's heading and also to get more into the specifics of how it affects us, both for video games as well as for film production, TV commercials, and a lot of other more boutique productions too. So that is it. I'm just going to give a bit of additional information here. Saul Rodgers is one of the co-founders and the director of Rewind Effects. If you want to work for Rewind, if you listen to this episode and you're like, wow, this stuff is awesome, I want in, because I kind of already want to myself, they're hiring right now. They've got a bunch of different positions they're looking to hire people for. So if you're interested, I will put the information at the end of this episode as to where to go and all the other information there. More importantly, if you want to skip all that, just go to the show links, which is allanmckay.com/24 for episode 24. It is 6 a.m. here, and I've had 2 hours sleep today, as well as pretty much every day for the past couple of days, which has been pretty brutal. So I'm going to leave it there because I got to get this episode out. And there's going to be more information at the very end of this episode, so stick around. I've got some really cool announcements which I'll put on to the tail end of this episode. But that is it for now. Let's dive in. I'm just curious with the VR stuff. I mean, how did you initially get into?
So from years and years of lecturing and having to adapt every year to new software, new practices, I'd done a whole bunch of real time in the past, and I'd worked for Sony for a bit, and then it's all kind of didn't really matter about it. But I saw the Kickstarter project come up for the first Oculus product, and I thought that looks pretty cool. And I remember doing some using and doing some VR in the 90s, and it was just fucking awful, like unbelievably bad. So people avoided it. So I thought, well, graphics have come on, it might be good. So I just backed it as I thought, that might be kind of a cool thing. And as soon as I got the headset and tried a couple of demos, I kind of had an epiphany of this is like a proper changing of everything. I hate the term, but it's a game changer. It is. It's a new way of seeing, a new way of experience, a new way of storytelling. There's so many kind of options to it. So I started kind of showing it to some people in the marketing and branding and kind of activations world, because I knew that, first of all, I couldn't make a game for it because there was only 6,000 headsets in the world. No one's going to buy them. And there was, and even now there's not enough to, if I made a game and sold it for $10.99, I'd barely break even if everybody fucking bought it. But if you go and do something interesting for a brand or a marketing agency, they've got budgets to spend which are pretty reasonable, where you could do something really cool, and it could either be sponsored by, or as we did with our Red Bull project, which is our first big one, it was just bang on for them. They want to be seen doing new innovative things. This piece of technology allows you to be close to the action. So in our thing, it was like sitting in one of their planes and being flown around like at 200 miles an hour, and it's something new and different. So it was really exciting to do something which wasn't the same old. We've always done kind of interactive stuff in Unity and bits of Unreal. In fact, we started our first project doing it as a Unity project, but it was just not a very beautiful game engine. It's open and easy to write for, but the actual kind of rendering engine's a bit ugly. So when we found out that Unreal was stepping up to the plate and its engine was good, and I'd used it a lot, I thought, well, let's push for that. And the sad thing was that every week they kept updating it, and every week their update would break everything that we'd just done. So it was like a continuously patching and patching and patching. So to get into it, it was like just a work. So a set of technologies we already understood, so let's just put this in the same place. The really tricky thing was trying to work out how people use VR, and everyone's trying to work it out. There's a lot of papers being written at the moment, but it's such a heightened and visceral experience, virtual reality, that everything has to be thought of again. If you move the camera around, you make people want to fall over because your eyes are telling you you're moving, but your ears aren't. Yeah. So there's a complete disconnect. And then, okay, so I've got this story, and I want to make the person look over their right shoulder to go and look at my beautiful red car or whatever it's going to be. How do I make them look that way? Well, I can't turn them because then it feels like I'm controlling them. So do I drag them with binaural audio, or do I do some kind of object that goes across screen where they follow it, or do I bring the action to them? So every time, no matter where they are, those people always walk in front of them. And it's crazy to try and work it all out right now. There's this Oculus last week released Story Studio. They've broken up a whole department now specifically to look at the VR storytelling. And they're doing 4 or 5 shorts being released over the year with big directors and a lot of time and effort put into it. Kind of case studies to show exactly what they have learned and how they think this could be done. And I think they're giving away open source as well. So after the project's out, you'll be able to download all the code and have a look at what they did and their learning. So they're really, really pushing for it, which is phenomenal.
One thing that I thought was really awesome is just your mindset, the fact that you are able to look at something that's a really great idea, but then actually look at, okay, now probably isn't the time to get into this, just because there being only like 6,000 headsets out there, it's probably not really an established market yet. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't really think so much about, is like, okay, this is going to be brilliant, but they don't. It's kind of like writing a book or something. It's like, you might buy the book, but is there other people out there who are likely to want to invest in that too? I
mean, even now there's maybe 100,000 units out there. There are still development kits. Samsung's Gear VR is out properly, but you need a £600 Note 4 to use it. And even if I put an app into that app store, I've got to sell it a lot to break even for doing some quality product. So if I adapt something, I can probably put it out there. So right now, I'm not going to put a huge amount of time and effort into producing a piece of like IP or specific app or game, other than little bits of marketing for myself. But looking at it from the side, like, I want to get involved with this. And I mean, it came from like a passion, like, I want to make some VR content, but I want to make good VR content, so it's going to cost some money. Right. Who has some money and would like this? So that was like what I did first. Like, so go to the big guys that I knew.
No, I'm just kidding.
Who wants to? I don't want to invest all this money. I think even this year, you put an app out there, it's still not going to turn over a profit. Not until Oculus put out a proper product, and even then, it's going to take a while before there's enough units out there to make proper, pure VR games work. Like, you'll have the VR version of a whatever game you would want, Call of Duty's, Forza's, Elite and Dangerous. There'll be a VR mode, but they'll be made for traditional kind of delivery platforms with a bit of VR. And until there's enough things out there, enough headsets, enough kind of take-up, then the money isn't there to make the really big games out of it or the big interactive experiences out of it.
That's right.
But it'll come. So Rebel was perfect because I went there and I said, look, let me make you a VR simulator for an activation. So we'll then build you a stand. We'll put 4 headsets. It'll travel around the UK. And it went to like the Formula One festival, a Goodwood thing, an air show, and a few others. And they said, cool, can you just shoot 360 video in the plane? And I said, well, no, because it's not VR for a start, and it's be shot on 6 GoPros, and it's all going to be a bit kind of immersive video. You're not going to get stereo and depth and this feeling of like gut-wrenching visceral VR. And they said, oh no, but we've seen this stuff before, it's great. I said, no, you haven't. So I came down with the DK1 and a couple of demos, and after, you know, the first person saw it, he took the headset off, kind of looked at me in the face, and just shouted up, you know, through the Red Bull building, "Hey guys, get down here!" Next thing is like 30 people in a room, all having a go, and everyone's super buzzing and exciting about it. And at which point the guy was like, "Right, I get it. Let's make it." So they just bought into it wholesale from that point on, and that went from being used 4 times, which I thought it was going to be this stand was. It got used every day for 2 months straight. They were moving it around from like massive shopping centers and big kind of events and outdoor festivals and you name it. Mm-hmm. And then we've ended up making it for 4 different countries, and this year they've asked us to kind of completely redevelop it and keep moving it forward to make sure it's ahead of the curve, which is pretty cool.
That's super cool. Yeah, it blows my mind actually that, you know, you can find something so innovative and see it kind of catch on like that. I'm kind of curious, like, typically when you're doing the filming stuff, because that's one thing I don't really have my head wrapped around is when you're doing the live action stuff, like how are you actually capturing that? Because I mean, I mentioned to a friend of mine the other day that I was going to do an interview with you, and I was really excited about it, and he actually brought that up, like, oh yeah, you're just doing like a 4-camera rig, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's not like that at all. So you know, because you see like the panoramic video stuff at like a live event, and you know, that's ugly as fuck, and obviously this is a whole other experience. I mean, what's your process typically from what you can divulge? Yeah,
so there's 2 sides to it currently. There's quick and dirty, which is reality capture, so 360 video or stereo 360. So traditional 360 video, there's a few rigs out there. The best ones still, and you can get your hands on, is 6 GoPros and a 3D printed cage. So they're trying to get the nodal points of all sensors as close as possible. Once you've got that, you can hit record on all the cameras, shoots in all directions, there's an overlap between each of the cameras, and then you throw it back through a piece of software like Colors, KR Panel, or whatever you want, and it'll then stitch it back into an echo-rectangular, so you get that weird unwrapped version, which is basically just a UV map version that goes back on a sphere. But you always get these stitch errors, which is the different parallax between the 2 lenses. And you can choose kind of the sweet spot. So you can say stitch the sweet spot being 2 meters away. So anything beyond 2 meters will be a bit blurry, and anything closer will be that. Or everything's closer, we'll do everything a meter away. But it's great because I can wander around at behind the scenes of a gig or at a festival or anywhere, and I can just shoot the same as you shoot video. Downside of it is that it captures everything, including you and the director and the lighting rig and everything. So it's great for kind of documentary stuff, but it's really hard to use if you're trying to do any kind of drama or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Then if you want to do, so that's only mono as well, so it's like just a camera looking into a sphere, and we've seen it for years.
Yep.
Do you remember QTVR, like QuickTime VR?
Yeah.
Like 98.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I've seen video versions of that since as well, and it's, you know, again, it's essentially a big panoramic thing. It seems to be a little bit of distortion, even without, though. It's not mind-blowing.
So you get it into a VR headset, so you've got 2 eyes looking into that sphere, but so you don't get any sense of depth. You just have I'm looking inside this thing, but I can choose wherever my head goes, and it's really cool because it's immersive video, and I can tell a story where we can move you around, and I could take you to like a lobby, and we'll pause for that, and then we'll use some hotspots to let you go off in different directions. So, but you start putting together what looks like a really bad DVD menu of like transition video to this point, and then looping this and come back. But it lets you capture it and lets you get it into market. So Samsung Gear VR is great for 360 video, and there's going to be a huge amount of people getting into immersive video production. Like I can feel it. So where I came through it is I've helped a few companies do spherical visual effects. So VFX for immersive video is really a pain in the ass because it's rendering a 360 camera and understanding that everyone's different, and then there's tracking and stitching errors and blah, 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 blah. But I get it, and we can be useful for that. And until someone brings out a specific camera for it, there's always going to be problems, and you just kind of put up with it. There are stereo 360 camera rigs, but you get kind of sweet spots of camera pairs. So look in one direction is good, And as you turn your head, you get kind of a nasty bit, and then you get a sweet spot and a nasty bit. And in fact, Samsung have just released, or have spoken about releasing, in quotes, a stereo 360 camera specifically designed to shoot this way. They announced it a couple of months ago. So that's going to be pretty sweet once we get our hands on that, because it won't involve any post-process. It's still pairs of cameras. I think there's 16 pairs or something, so it's a lot more. There's also a company called Jaunt, which are doing their own kind of camera rig and post-process, which is doing a bit of kind of pixel tracking, depth map creation from it, which is kind of interesting as well. So these are all like immersive video, because you press play and it goes, and you have the ability where you look in that world. And that's pretty much it, other than a bit of binaural audio. But it's not what I'm calling true VR, because it's not fully interactive. You don't get any stereo from it. So if you do everything in CG, which is in a real-time game engine, which is where I'm making a stance that we pretty much only do fully CGI virtual reality. You get it into Unity or Unreal, so it's not a render process. There's no comping behind it. You still have to make the assets in the same way. You still have to make the worlds in the same way. But because of that, you get two cameras rendering in real time at 75 or 90 frames a second into the universe. You can not only change their pivotal position in space, but their translation, so they can move around within a volume, which is being tracked by the DK2. Or if we did a proper mocap, we'll let you walk around the space or fly around, drive around, whatever you want. And once you get that, your subconscious just gets completely tricked by it, because if I see something and I'm using kind of stereo pair vision to kind of distance, so that's 2 or 3 meters away. And if I try and move my head, that gets taken away. And if I give some audio as well, the only thing you've got left is your sense of touch and gravity, which if you're standing up, you might be wrong.
Right.
So that's why these people get a wobbly and kind of like sucked into it and everything else. So the visceral nature of that, of true VR, is where it gets super exciting. Immersive video, I think, is okay, but I think it's just what people are going to get involved with for now. And in fact, the guys from Oculus said the same thing. They're like, we don't like 360 video. Yeah. But it's a necessary evil to get people involved with us as we go forward to doing real, proper, true VR. So the process is, we storyboard everything up, and then we do an asset list, and then we model all those assets in Max or Maya and get them all really done with good normal maps, and then into the game engine, whatever that may be. So it's usually Unity or Unreal for most of our kind of pretty stuff. And then you use Unreal to do your world building and all your kind of particles and dynamics. And then you're just in there, same as anything else, putting in all the code. So you use Matinee to do keyframed animation of the cameras, and then you start looking at AI for people, or car mechanics, and everything that you do in kind of Max or Maya to generate how a car moves. There's a car rig inside Unreal. You start binding all the objects to it, and that becomes your rig for driving around.
So that sounds really awesome, man. Like, I'm just curious, like, what's your relationship with the Oculus Rift guys, and also with Epic, or at least the Unreal Engine guys? I mean, do you have a pretty close relationship with those developers?
Yeah, so we've had a really, really good relationship with Oculus since the first DK1. So we reached out to them and said we want to do something specific with it, and in a commercial manner as well. Because they've got a bit of paper. When you buy your development kit, it says will not use for any commercial work, and you're like, oh well, I'm kind of using it for commercial work. So you reach out to them and you tell them the project you're going to do. And it's kind of like an approval process, which is, I couldn't work out when we first worked on it why I needed to check something off. I'm like, if a TV manufacturer can't tell me I can't make a bad B movie, I'm like, I'm just going to make a really crappy B movie. I'm going to play it on your screen. But what they realized really early is that, and it's still now, people don't disconnect VR content with Oculus headsets. They're said in the same sentence. So they think, a bad piece of virtual reality content is some reason that it's Oculus's fault.
So let me jump on that for a second. So you're basically saying that they want to do quality assurance to make sure that no one's putting out any crappy content on there. Like, it's kind of like doing an iPhone app or something. It needs to go through their approval process to see whether it qualifies to be on their platform.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So why they've got control of the commercial bit, in quotes. And then there's a lot of stuff out there, indie developers, there's a whole app store thing where there's a lot of stuff. But anyone who's doing anything which is in the public domain, so like my activation goes to a huge festival, it gets hundreds of, thousands and thousands of people go through it. They want to make, and that's probably the first people to go on that Oculus product, and they're not super geeks, so they don't know the difference.
Yeah.
So they want to make sure that people like us that are doing that are putting out things which people go, wow, that Oculus VR experience is really fucking good.
Yeah.
Because that sentence gets said. They don't say that VR content was really good because they're not educated enough to understand what the technology is.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been working very closely to make sure that the things that we create pass their approval process, and any feedback that we take on board. The key things I've always been fighting for is frame rate. The frame rate of the thing has to be as high as possible, because any drop in frame rate, it doesn't really matter if you're on a Mac or a PC or PS4 or whatever. But if you've got something strapped to your face, and the reality you believe is in front of you starts kind of glitching, it just completely fucks with you.
What's the minimum? Is it like 60 frames a second, or
75 on DK2, and it's got to be a solid 75, no more, no less. And then the new one's going to be even faster than that. And then it's DK2 is like a 1080p screen, and then the new one is going to be even higher than that. So it's gonna push graphics cards to their absolute limit. So you have to start betting smart. But with true VR and CG, I put the headset on and I have a max teapot in front of me with one light on it with a standard shader. And if I press render, it'd look crap. But in VR, you go, wow, this room's really bright, and why is that teapot so mattely painted? You don't think because you get fooled into believing what you're there, and the reality you're seeing, you start kind of to judge and quantify, instead of in the world of going, that's bad graphics. You just go, wow, what drugs have you taken? It's making everything so fucking neon.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So there's lots of things. They use this term called presence, which is how much you feel like you're there in the experience. And your ability to choose where you're looking, so the tracking has to be really accurate and low latency. Then your head position, so they've got a camera that tracks you in like translation space, so it's about 1 meter by meter cube, and the new one will be like 3 by 3 or something. And then the visual fidelity and the stereo in front of you, so the resolution of that screen is the next one. Can I feel like the photons in my eye? I'm not kind of seeing all the pixels there. And then the audio as well. Then the final thing on the back of it is what I'm looking at. So is it a well-modeled chair or teapot or world or tank or dragon? But that's below the list for kind of believability. All the other things come first. So it's kind of exciting to think that, there's a lot of people think, I've got to make this like 50 million poly car and all this sort of stuff to make every tiny stitch perfect. Well, actually, the believability is actually way before then, keeping all those other levels up really high.
That's awesome. And do you think what would be more important for you, accurate lighting or texturing?
I would say,
just in terms of like what will kind of make people be more immersed in it.
Shader work is first. So the quality of the shader that you're looking at. So good texture max, good normals, and any reflections and refractions and all the other kind of cool stuff that goes along with that, obviously is really good. So Unreal's got some beautiful stuff it can do with its shaders. And then, obviously good lighting is always a hard thing to do in real time, because it's you can bake down a light map and you can put a couple of other cheats in there. It's great for any architectural work or anything static, so there's no change or any objects. Brilliant. We'll just bake everything. You can put let it churn away and do some massive global illumination thing or PBR thing.
Like, what's Oculus Rift's kind of thoughts on what you're doing?
So we came into the game really early, and it's why we've been working with them back and forth through all kind of our big projects recently. Is they knew they were doing something new and innovative, and it was based towards gaming. And then so many other people got involved. So we got involved with kind of marketing. Other people got involved for it kind of for post-traumatic stress. Other people have got involved with it for kind of doctors and surgery. And they've suddenly realized that they've opened Pandora's box, and everybody wants to get involved with it for different ways. So they've been stretched really thin to make sure that they do work with all these people and give them support, but also understand that, at some points they were like 20, 30 people, tiny company. And this is before kind of the Facebook buyout.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually on the phone to a couple of the guys talking about one of our projects at the time where they actually got bought out, and they announced it to the office, and you could just hear what sounded like a bomb went off in the background. I was like, what the hell is that? And they go, everyone's going crazy. I don't understand why. And they hung up. And they rang me back going, yeah, we just got bought by Facebook. I think we're going to be okay. Yeah, you guys are going to be fine. It's crazy. They did so well off it. And Facebook and kind of Mark and that bunch have done a really honest job of not messing with the production schedule. of the products they're making, that all they've done is they've said, have enough money to make sure you do this right. Yeah. You don't have to release a product if it isn't good enough yet. And that changed them having to be push to kind of, okay, well, let's step back and look what we've made, because what they did was, create such a massive buzz within like 9 months, of them talking about it, getting the first sets out there. The world had changed almost overnight, and they weren't really ready for it. They're like, wow, we'll just keep trying to please everybody and get on with it and make amazing stuff, and get stuff to the developers as quickly as possible.
I think that's really important if you've got companies that do acquire a business or a product or whatever it's going to be, to ensure that, unless there's a good necessary need to, then you don't disrupt what they're doing. It's like, carry on with what you're doing, but here's more support so that way you can do it better.
Yeah. We've been working with Samsung as well, which is quite nice. So the deal between Samsung and Oculus was kind of Samsung helped out with the screen tech and also the delivery of the product, and it's a good marrying up. And so they got the Gear VR out there first, which is the mobile phone based version of a kind of a VR headset. And it's great. It's a really high resolution screen. It's a really portable product. You don't have wires, but you've got to take everything down to kind of what a mobile phone can do, which is pretty good. It's like the power of a PS3, which isn't bad, for a little device on your phone, but it makes some things really, really tricky. But we're also looking at, we convert all of our experiences into mobilized versions, which work kind of without a headset, and then if you hit a VR version, it works with like a Google Cardboard or any of the other headsets that are going to come out. There's going to be like 100 of them this year, which are all basically just optics to mount a mobile phone in the front. Right. So your phone, my phone, iPhones, Androids, whatever, will just be able to run it using their gyroscopes. It's okay, but it's not, the refresh rate and the latency isn't good enough for doing really, really high quality VR work. Yeah. But there'll be a lot more of them out there. You'll see people like giving away Google Cardboard versions of their product at pretty much every event, I reckon, this year.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And what about Epic? Have you had a chance to kind of show them like what you're doing with all the Unreal stuff?
Yeah, so we only a little bit. So we reached out to them when we were having some real troubles with their kind of like their updates, their builds, and that sort of stuff. And I swiftly realized that there's kind of like a few guys. It's not many who were looking after the VR bit. They're kind of like a little bit of SDK, a little bit of code. Well, I thought it was like the whole company behind it. And actually, there were these few guys, and I was like, "Oh, right, so it's just you? All right, well, we've broken it. This is how we broke. Can you help us fix it?" So back and forth. So they've been really supportive, and I think they, especially, we bumped into the actual guys at Oculus Connect back in LA in September, and they were just like, "Yeah, we didn't quite realize how many people want this." So now they're really getting behind it. And also, just if Unreal are getting it done right now, their software and their platform will become the engine of choice for all this sort of tech.
That's awesome, man. And you've seen, obviously, a lot of what's going on. You're pretty much an authority on VR at this point. Like, what's some of the most interesting things you've seen so far? Not necessarily the stuff that you're doing, but what you've seen out there. I mean, because there's been a lot of pretty diverse stuff, from everything from, obviously, there's a big one for Oculus Rift of male and female, like, swapping to kind of experience that. I mean, it's been pretty amazing. What is some of the stuff you've seen?
There was a really interesting one I read about like a couple of weeks ago or last month, where someone is like living another person's life for 24 hours. So, no, it's longer than that. It's like 28 days.
So it's going to be the Sims, Sim life?
Kind of like, so someone's wearing a 360 camera rig on, their face and filming their entire life. And then that is being captured, converted and streamed and then played to this person who's wearing a headset in a controlled environment, of living that person's life in that person's flat, from like eating and showering and to hanging out with his girlfriend and watching TV. So this other person is living through that, and when he like that, the first person like eats his dinner, there'll be people who basically put that exact meal out in front of this other person so he can eat at the same time.
Wow.
And it as a kind of social study of another reality and being in someone else's body, in quotes, or shoes. I think that's really, really interesting. A couple of ones of like nice ones, and something we wrote about recently is we did this project as a test, which was like a London VR. You can basically take a tourism thing, a trip around London, and this lady in the States, she downloaded a copy and got her grandma an Oculus and took it to her while she was in hospital and let her like put this headset on and do a whole bunch of crazy things like ride a roller coaster and explore London, etc. And she was on her final legs of kind of cancer. I didn't even know at the time. And she said it was like it gave her the opportunity to do something she couldn't do in like before she passed away, like ticking things off her bucket list. And that kind of blew me away. That it was doing something really positive and good. So I've been looking at how VR can be used for empathy and understanding a lot. And who was it recently? I'm going to say the Norwegian government, but I'm wrong. It's one of those over there. Let's say, a Scandinavian government.
I was going to say, let's just like summarize it.
Yeah, so a Scandinavian government put...
Finland's going to be pissed at you, like, it was us.
They did a thing where they put a whole bunch of Gear VRs and 360 video and let all their politicians basically have walk around an Ebola camp, so they could see what it's like and how bad it is on the ground out there.
Wow.
And be there, so to increase someone's understanding of another situation. Not just, what I do is like help people sell things to people that don't know they want it yet.
Yeah.
So like, buy a ticket.
They're not reading a report.
Or
they're actually getting to see it firsthand.
Yeah. So this idea of bringing people even closer to a reality through empathy and understanding is really interesting. I think that breaks a whole bunch of stuff up, and that's where I spoke to the Oculus guys about what they did, and they're doing stuff with the kind of U.S. Navy for post-traumatic stress syndrome and how you help people get off kind of frontline Afghanistan stuff, and you bring people back in stages instead of bringing them back cold turkey. You keep them kind of slowly coming out of war zones, or if you're down 2 miles under the sea in a submarine. And you start freaking out because you get claustrophobic. Instead of just drugging them up, you go, well, here's a big
empty room for you to walk around.
Put a VR headset on and now put you in a cornfield or up a mountain or show you another reality and to calm you down and put you in another understanding. So that's really those sort of things are really interesting and exciting.
It blows my mind. I mean, that to me is why I think I kind of got so into it. And again, it's so stupid considering I haven't actually experienced it for myself. But
I'm gonna have to send you a headset.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I know so many people now have picked one up, and I'm like, I really got to do it. It's just time. But for me, I think it's just I remember probably '93 is when VR, like all the big VR stuff was coming out, and it was meant to. I remember reading articles, and it's all meant to take over the world. Virtual reality is such a big thing, and then you have crap like the Lawnmower Man as well. But I mean, even arcade games, you had like VR racing, you had Virtual Fighter, you had all these different things going on, and it looked like it was going to be a big boom, and then it fizzled. And I don't know, it was. I guess when I first started reading about the Oculus Rift, it was just for me like, wow, like it's one of those moments when you're like, okay, we're not going to have flying cars, we're going to have virtual reality finally, 15 years later on, but it's actually coming to a reality. And I just see so much potential for this. Like, it really blows my mind in terms of like everything we do can potentially be that. And I'm not like a Star Trek person, but I remember they had like the holodeck, and it was a big empty room.
Yeah, it's what everyone wants.
Yeah, but again, like it's kind of like, okay, well that's one of a million ways of where it's going. It's like you go into a room and you can make that into anything.
Well, that's where I'm a massive VR person. I love Oculus. I'm behind them. I build all my products and that. But I've been following two other things really closely. So the guys with Magic Leap are doing some very interesting stealthy stuff. Have we spoken about that before?
No, I don't think we have.
Yeah, so Magic Leap have got $500 million worth of investment for a company that haven't said what they're doing. If you go to their website, it's like a hand open and it's holding an elephant. You're like, the fuck is that? But they put out some patents last week or week before, just 2 days before Microsoft released all their stuff about the HoloLens. Yeah. So I got rung up the next day by like 4 or 5 British newspapers and mags going, tell me what the HoloLens is, tell me why it's important, what's all this stuff? And I'm going, well, Google killed off Google Glass for a reason. They've moved their team over to something else. And if you read between the lines, there's this Magic Leap thing. And if you look at the timing of what they're doing next to what HoloLens is doing, you can pretty much hazard a best that they're in a very similar place. So the idea of instead of replacing your reality, so VR is completely taking over and giving you another universe, HoloLens and hopefully what Magic Leap will be is a is an improvement adaptation in putting stuff into a universe or changing it. So if you look at any of the kind of the HoloLens stuff, it's pretty cool. 3D scanning off the headsets for positional tracking, and then using clever transparent LED, LCD, OLED, whatever it may be, and also controlling the light. So it's not just overlaying light, it's kind of blocking away and overlaying back into it, so you get kind of a better version of your universe. That's where the holodeck will happen. I'll take you to a space which is all padded, you put on your headset, and then I'll overlay within that space that you can walk around safely in a large enough thing. And it will do the same thing. You get near the wall, and that, it'll kind of a little force field will come up because you can't travel that far. Or the floor underneath you will just kind of be on a massive conveyor belt, so it can always keep you kind of centralized in a certain space.
That's actually a good point, because I think if you Google like Oculus Rift fails, something along those lines, you're going to see all the people who put it on, they're going down a roller coaster or something, and people are injuring themselves, like falling over, because they're having that disconnect between what's real and what's not. Going back to the Oculus Rift, I guess there is other equipment and peripherals coming out that kind of fall in conjunction with it, like. And the big thing is to do with all the fails, all the falling over and everything else. I've seen a kind of multi-directional treadmill, that can keep you balanced.
WizDish or Omni thing or Omni treadmill. There's a few of them out there.
Yes, I mean, what kind of stuff like that is coming out that kind of helps kind of bridge between the glasses and everything else out there?
So they're really early days with that stuff, and all those kind of dish things are basically slippy socks and a bit of a parabolic dish, and then some ways of tracking your feet movement. Some things are great at it, you can feel like you're almost running and walking around those spaces, but it is definitely a weird version of it. And the other thing is that I don't really want to run around. If I want to play Call of Duty, I don't want to get out of breath and get exhausted and run 2 or 3 miles down a street. So
I was just thinking that
there comes a point where you go, actually, I'm okay with my version of reality being heightened, but I don't need a complete. I don't want to get shot with a. You can put a vest on at the minute, which does kind of haptic feedback of bullet hits, and there's one out there which does it so bad, so intensely that it actually bruises you. Wow. And I'm like, well, I'm okay with not having that.
There are going to be people though who are totally into that shit.
To the extreme level, to the next kind of stepping it up. So there are lots of peripherals. The main one is trying to get in tracking of you and your hands. So there is the Leap, which you can now there's an adapter to put it on the front of the Oculus. So if you hold your hand up in front of your face, it tracks your hands and your fingers. You can at least see your hand and use that to interact. And the HoloLens has the same thing. So when you hold your hand up, it's doing Kinect-based depth tracking, so it knows your hand is in front of your face, and that can allow you to interact with the universe. The other one, which has been really exciting, which has been had it on order forever, is a company called which are releasing a product called STEM, STEM, which is, if you remember the Razer Hydra handsets, it was a couple of years ago, which were tethered, so they're just kind of control sticks, but they are millimeter accurately tracked and gyroscope positioned to a little magnetic base station in front of it. So they're really just positional space compared to where that thing is. So you can do lightsabers and things. But they're releasing it, so it's a completely wireless product with up to 5 boxes.
Wow.
So you could put one on your arms, put one on your head, put one on your feet, and then you kind of got a mocap system which is already plugged completely there, that's going to be quite cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's amazing. I can talk to you about this stuff all day. I mean, what is your opinion of the HoloLens? I mean, obviously the video coming out, it's, a bit of an exaggeration, but it's kind of more to kind of open your mind as to where it's going to go. But I mean, I was talking to someone the other day about this with the iPhone 1. I mean, you need there to be something out to kind of set the standard for, what is possible. So, I mean,
there needs to be a killer app. There needs to be a reason to do it. And I think HoloLens itself is it's a step up. I read those things. I saw the videos. I was like, well, I'll wait until I see it.
Yeah.
But the guys, the two or three journalists that went and did it, just were like, yeah, this is really, really good. And the guys from Wired aren't normally one to pull punches. They would normally say what they think of it, and they said it was pretty damn decent. So I think there's probably, really, seeming this Kinect technology they did a pretty good job on, and it went quiet. They've kind of pulled that team into this new device. It could be very interesting. I don't think it's going to be used in the same way like a general peripheral will, but for certain people it's going to be change everything. So big industrial plants where everyone can look at the insides and see all the errors and all the problems, or kind of medical things, or kind of additional universe stuff is great. But I'm not going to wear it at home to kind of watch TV on, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I mean, it's definitely something that can give you that interaction. I mean, it's kind of going to the stage of like Minority Report or Iron Man in terms of all the VR stuff. But I mean, that's kind of cool too, because if you can have that interaction, or even see how your stuff is going to fit together with other things. I mean, you got 3D printing, you got you got a lot of other tech that when you start bringing it all together, you're going to be able to see, interact with something before it's made, prototype it, and then when you're happy, you can start setting off to get mass production without.
Well, the HoloLens is basically going to do the Iron Man thing. So the hologrammy building a product in front of yourself, and then a really high accuracy HUD overlay of your universe. It's gonna do that. Whereas Oculus's product is about giving you a completely different universe.
Exactly.
Whereas HoloLens won't be able to put me somewhere else completely. It'll just improve what I'm seeing, or allow me to. So they had a demo where you were standing on Mars, I think, hanging out with a rover. But it's definitely that rover and that Mars universe is in the space you're already in as a secondary thing. Whereas an Oculus product will be, wow, I'm completely somewhere different. But it will never bring back. It won't be able to do the overlay thing. So there are kind of divergence of the technologies in two different directions there. From what we,
I love that though, because like most people, obviously just playing catch up with what Oculus Rift is doing and trying to essentially make replicas of it. Whereas like to see Microsoft is actually going and taking a whole different path with what they're doing. I mean, I kind of love that, because it is two very different worlds that you can kind of explore. So
it's about time Microsoft stepped up with something.
Yeah.
They've been taking their time to,
Yeah, they're actually going less into a reactive mode for once, I guess. But no, it's great. I mean, and even for like going back to like, let's say video games, something like that, for instance. I mean, if it means that you can look to your right and see, a little map of the terrain that you're running around in, or other things happening around you, it's at least something to kind of commit to. But you're right. Like I can kind of see the HoloLens being more of a productive tool than necessarily used for entertainment.
You could imagine though, like wearing it and playing a game on your Xbox, and then the game can like break out of the screen and come onto like your table in front of you, and up
or whatever else.
Instead of just in front of you, it kind of leaps out onto the universe you're already in. I hope it's as good as the videos they were showing it with.
At least version 2 or 3, maybe.
Maybe.
I'm really excited about this stuff. I mean, you gave a talk at Autodesk University last year in Vegas. What was it on? I didn't get to make it because I think I was talking the exact same time.
You were on the exact same time. I was gutted. I was like, I'll go and see Allan's thing. Oh, no, I can't. I'm talking the same time.
But yeah, what were some of the key takeaways on your talk?
So I was doing a general overview of what VR is and how it can be utilized in different kind of industries. So for architectural and product and engineering, and also for entertainment, and the kind of pipelines that you need to get involved with, and the kind of issues. So as I said earlier about a lot of people want a VR thing. They want an Oculus activation or an Oculus app to go along with the rest of the thing because they've heard about it. It's the same as like the app rush. I want an app for my, I want an iPhone app. I'm like, what's it going to do? It's basically our website. I'm like, well, then you should just have your website. You don't need an app, unless you're bringing something additional to the table and doing something interesting, then you shouldn't just do it for the sake of doing it. It's not going to do anything for you, So I was saying that they need to think about the content they're creating and why they're using it. But the big thing I was saying, especially as Autodesk University, is a lot of engineering and kind of visualization people are saying that actually it's a much better product and tool for visualization work. Instead of rendering out a 2-minute fly-through of a building and then having some changes and then having to render it again and not being able to do it, but by using Oculus technology and a real-time engine, first of all, if there are any client changes, they're instant. And secondly, the user gets such a better heightened experience of that place or that design because they not only are they standing there and looking around within that the building or engineering plant or whatever else, but the stereo depth and position stuff lets you really take in what you're seeing. So, you can look around a corner and realize that line of sight around this kind of building layout is wrong, because you can go anywhere within the space, and you're actually feeling it going, wow, this is a really big space, or oh wow, this is a really thin corridor and it's actually horrible to walk down, which you wouldn't get unless you would put them in VR in that way.
I guess when I walk through a building, I'm never like, wow, this is such a horrible corridor. We should totally change this.
Well, someone had to design it. Someone thought about laying that building out in that way, hopefully. So, architects really should and do spend a lot of time on that stuff, and they often don't get to actually experience the buildings until they're put up. Or they're trying to just do their best guesswork from plans and drawings and kind of visualization renders.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
The other thing I was talking about was just that the amount of technologies that are going to come out this year, and the wave of what VR is. So the Sony's version Morpheus will be out soon, and that's going to come along. And then Xbox had something in development, which seems like HoloLens is what their one's going to be. And then you've obviously got what Oculus are doing, and then you've got Samsung, and then you've got all these other mobilized headsets. So I was saying that it's a real gold rush at the moment of people wanting to get involved with VR. And if they hadn't, or if you haven't already started looking into it, you really should, because it will have an effect on pretty much all of the engineering, entertainment, visualization, visual effects, filmmaking industries are all going to have some sort of input with VR. Either it's going to be can you make us a VR thing as well, or it's going to be a completely replacement for what you're doing. We were talking about evolving and adapting.
Yeah.
Some industries are going to go. Some companies are going to be dead because the pipeline they developed is redundant and is going to be replaced by AR or VR.
Yeah, and a lot of people have tried in the past to kind of adapt how we work. And I mean, that's one thing I was kind of curious about, was your opinion of VR in general, whether it is, let's say, going the direction of HoloLens or Oculus Rift. Do you see for visual effects, let's say, and more the production process, do you think that it's going to change the process and that end of things more, or do you think it's more going to be just purely going to be the output platform, like 3D glasses, stuff like that we're currently doing? I mean, do you think it will affect typically our production process? Yeah,
so Framestore at the minute have a little VR studio as part of their guide, so they'll take some IP they're doing for Game of Thrones and do a little Game of Thrones bit of experience. There was a new film called Wild with Reese Witherspoon, which they did a 5-minute VR trailer experience that they released alongside the movie as a marketing exercise. But it was shot well and acted well and put all the stuff into it. It's another thing that was happening alongside the main production. But as we were talking about earlier about quickest route to market. So there's no point trying to sell that because there isn't enough people to buy it right now. But they're looking at it as people will start making pure VR films, in quotes, or experiences. And there will be studios starting up or adapting what they're currently doing to produce content for that sort of stuff. But at the minute, it's definitely we'll make this with that on the side. But there is a couple of very interesting things happening. The guys, there's a studio in London which have just brought out a renderer that works with Arnold that does kind of VR, so spherical rendering. We can all do 360 renders, but with deep pixel data alongside it.
Cool.
So that you can change not only your rotation position, but you've got a volume position, like a translation position within a certain volume from that camera render. It's a hideous render amount at the moment, but it's very, very interesting. And if it's coming out of Arnold and it's coming out of Maya, you can imagine that actually, if we've already got a pipeline that is delivering rendered sequences for VFX or CG, and then we've got spherical renders we can get out of that because we'll do the environments a bit better. The ability to actually go, let's do a VR positional based render off the back of it. That will help all of us with our VFX and CGI pipelines, because it's just it's almost like a renderer. Instead of going, I've got to take it through a game engine and Unreal and all the other stuff, it's kind of like a plugin on the end of the system, which kind of allows our current pipelines not to have to be thrown out the window. It's just like I plug that on the end of it.
I'm kind of curious what, in terms of the more the overhead for it. I mean, as soon as you go deep, you're dealing with so many more channels, and it gets heavy quick. I mean, you're dealing with like gigs and gigs and gigs of data on any given element. So I mean, I'm kind of curious.
These guys were running, I think it was like 3 gig a second or something.
Wow. That's awesome though. I mean, I don't know, I love it because it kind of feels like it's been so boring the last 10 years in terms of like, there's been new rendering tech, but in terms of really big, I'm going to use game changers since you don't like that word. I mean, it's really amazing. It's pretty exciting kind of to see where it's all heading at the moment.
Definitely. I'll find you a link to it because it's worth showing it out to some. It's a small UK-based place that have just sort of looking at it, but it's very, very interesting because it's just plugged into our current pipeline.
Yeah, get ready because typically I write up all my show notes. I have a feeling I'm going to be kind of following up with you a little bit to be like, what was the link for that again? So get ready for that. But just going back to, I guess, keeping with visual effects a bit longer. Actually, one last question I had was more about where do you kind of see this stuff heading? Because I find that's going to be, I think this is very much you can take this question however you want because it's, I remember I went to a talk with, trying to remember, thingy from Apple, not Steve Jobs, but Wozniak. So yeah, Wozniak, I mean,
thingy from Apple.
You hear some Q&A with him, and actually it's kind of funny because I was in Finland and it was a remote call back to San Fran, and so I was sitting front row because I was one of the speakers, and there's a big Q&A going on, and he was like 30 feet tall, like doing Q&A with the audience. So, but yeah, I noticed with him whenever people were asking him questions, like for someone who is representing Apple and is such a big name, like he was not afraid to go into some really out there subjects that just kind of scream nerd and kind of very sci-fi. But I mean, it's kind of cool that he can kind of think that far ahead into stuff that isn't really tangible anytime soon. But I don't know, where do you see this stuff going?
If a bit of kind of blue sky thinking, I think we're getting to a point where if you can imagine all the technologies that we, and seeing how fast we're adapting, the technologies we're doing is all kind of put something on my face, put something on my head, plug it into some technologies. I really see it as it will be it'll be a contact lens. It'll be a very small thing you put on top of your eye, and you'll put in a very small kind of hearing aid size earpiece to augment or replace our reality in that way. So the technology is going to get smaller, the resolution is going to get better, and instead of us kind of putting these, we'll think these headsets being bulky and kind of ridiculous, as in computing back in like the early 90s was, and where we've come so far. It's not a stretch of the imagination to see that we'll replace these with transparent, tiny transparent screens that are on our eyes. And they'll work in conjunction, either as a VR, a replacement of our reality, or as an AR to augment it in front of us.
A lot of people these days talk about chips, like getting chip implants, stuff like that. And I imagine even doing any lenses, anything contact lenses is going to be still slightly invasive for a lot of people. I mean, do you think that some people are going to want to go as far as put like contact lenses in to play their favorite video game, or?
Or maybe I think it would just become a thing that was a natural progression. Like we didn't think we'd be carrying around phones all the time, but we do. We're connected to the internet full time, and I think augmented, so wearables, I think, I've written a couple of articles recently on what wearables are and watches and Google Glasses and kind of other things. But if someone told me I could put in a little RFID tag into my arm that would check my vital statistics continuously and then feed that to my insurance company, it would give me cheaper insurance on my medical because it kept track of it and also gave me advice and kind of heads off over the path, I'd do it. I'd pay a fair amount of money to make sure I'm healthy. And you can see that the cyborg thing of where we're going at the minute of adding things onto the outside of us isn't going to be too long before we're adding them as part of our day-to-day life. We already have pacemakers which look after kind of people, their heart rhythms and that sort of thing. And there was a guy that put an RFID reader chip, like just a really bulk, you can see it under his hand, but he could then put his hand on his car and it would open the door. Just because it read the thing. But get rid of my wallet, get rid of all my stuff, make it an RFID thing just in my wrist. I'd be totally up for that. And you can see that thing. The other thing is, if you're really looking into the distance, our perception of reality is just photons bouncing on some nerve endings, which send some electrical signals. So why try and mimic photons hitting eyeballs when actually we could just get into the electric signals themselves and kind of stimulate and activate those as a direct pathway into what the brain is seeing and imagining. So something that goes onto the outside of the head or into something else like that, instead of trying to replicate it.
Is that the next business plan that you're doing?
I'm sure there are some people out there looking at it. It's not, there's, some really interesting things of cyborg AI stuff. I mean, even just like people being able to hear again, or they use cochlear implants that kind of stimulate the brain.
I did watch a really great video the other day of someone seeing for the first time in 20 years after losing his vision in the wars, or shrapnel, I think.
Was that the 64 pixel thing?
I'm not sure. I was clicking through, I saw it, I just decided, it's one of those clickbait videos that I decided to actually watch for once, and just because I thought it would be really cool, but I wasn't sure what the tech was behind it or why. I'm assuming maybe it's like really intense light is, he's able to actually perceive a lot more.
Well, there's a few. I watched something similar, but one of the ones I saw where they actually just put a 64 by 64 array. So it's quite, it's a number of electrodes onto the back of the eye, onto the kind of the nerve endings, and they could stimulate them and on or off, which you could then imagine seeing an ultra contrast version of what a camera's seeing. So you could make out a hand, a face, a chair, a teapot, a thing, or anything else. And it was exactly that. Someone who, people that had seen before and they used this could actually ring at that, but the people that had never seen, like born blind, it was just amazing. So that we're getting to a point where we're beginning to mess with fixing nature.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, and I mean, we go on those subjects like, we are at the point now where people are looking and producing artificial organs, hearts, everything else. So I mean, all that stuff's around the corner. So it's finally. I mean, I still don't have my fucking flying cars that I've been promised, but. Well, it'll get there.
It'll come. I'll work on it for you. I see what I can do.
I've actually seen flying cars. Like I went to New York Motor Show once, and they've got them. It's just I think we're at the point now where people are such terrible drivers on the road that putting them up in the air is just not going to be a smart thing at all for anyone. But no, I mean, I think this is really great. I mean, going back to visual effects, just to kind of go back to what you do and what you're currently doing. One thing I kind of tapered off from before, but like what has been to date your funnest project to work on?
There's been a few goodies. I mean,
I want to hear about the balloon for sure.
One of the funnest ones was doing just the launch of Xbox One, doing a massive projection mapping project for Europe. We had no time. We had like 6 days or 7 days, and the whole, I said to the office, I said, we've got this brief to do this big animated building projection mapping project. We've only got a week, and everyone's like, oh, I'm not really sure. I said we'd have to put in double shifts and that sort of stuff, and everyone kind of went, I'm not sure. And I said, well, it is for Xbox One, and everyone went, hell yeah. So we kind of moved in. So everyone moved in with sleeping bags into the office, and we just kind of dug deep and got the whole thing done. And because it wasn't kind of a linear story, it was just kind of make really cool graphics. That was super exciting. But probably the most fun one is, it's what we were talking about earlier, was the Red Bull project, the air race, because it's so new and it's VR, and it's for a world championship that travels the world. We get to go to every stop and kind of set up this VR scenario. So we're off to Abu Dhabi in 2 weeks, and then we're off to China, and then Budapest, and then Vegas, and then
Do you have any time off during your Vegas trip?
I don't. I've sent some other people. I'm just going along to kind of shake people's hands. Yeah. So I'll be there just to get drunk and have a good time. Sweet. Make sure the client's happy.
Maybe I'll have to fly down and grab a few drinks.
Yeah, do it, definitely.
But going back to the Red Bull one, I mean, what specifically, if you could walk us through, like what it entailed, like what you were doing for it?
So we're creating a VR simulator or a VR experience that goes along with the race. So it's part of the traveling circus. So the air race is the Formula One of the skies, they call it. So it's a world championship, and they have racetracks which they go and set up with these huge pylons in different places. So we wanted to let people feel what it's like to sit in one of the planes. So the first thing they did, they go and stick me in one of these planes in Croatia, And it was fucking amazing. Just the accuracy and skill of these pilots to be able to fly at such speeds so low to the ground and kind of hit all these markers. So we 3D scan or take really high quality reference of each of the areas. So some of them are in cities, some of them are in deserts, some of them, the one in Ascot's at a kind of a racetrack for a horse racing. And then we build we recreate that universe, so make all the assets, make the whole thing. And then we took last year's world champion and we're doing it again this year to fly the course. So we put kind of all the specifics of the plane, we put all the kind of air densities, and then we let him fly it with a kind of a joystick and kind of that sort of to fly around. So he puts a time in and a lap of exactly how he will do it on the day, and then we use that data to drive people's experiences to fly along with that pilot.
Wow.
What it's going to be like. This year, though, we're going to up the game, and we're actually going to take actual GPS telemetry data from each of the planes and allow you to fly with that person.
That's so cool.
Really, really cool. And then, obviously, because we've done all that far, then we have a completely flyable version for us in the office right now, so everyone can set real lap times, which is good fun.
Man, that's awesome.
So we take this traveling circus, we take the headsets, we build a little stand, and we go set it up at these events and let people feel what it's like to, they see the guy flying the real plane in front of them at a grandstand, and I can put them in a headset and go, this is as close as you're going to get to what it's like to be in one of those planes. And everyone gets off just kind of elated, smiling, a little bit of adrenaline boost, going, wow, I can't believe everyone thinks they're moving and flying around when actually they're just sitting on a seat.
That's great.
So yeah, that one. Red Bull are great. They're a great company. They're really energetic. They're really go-getting. And the sports they have on their roster are just really exciting. So they're extreme sports brands. So it's really, really exciting to work. And they're just, as we were talking about earlier, about good clients to work with. They're really, really positive people, and they get what we're trying to do together, and they feel like it's a collaborative process. They're not like, here's your check, give me my thing. It's more like, oh wow, let's develop this. What can we do better? How can we work together to deliver the best thing as a product together? So it's a really good relationship.
I've really been a big fan of their work. I mean, I had dinner with one of the guys from the head marketing of Europe, one of the top guys in marketing in Europe, and that's one thing I've always respected about them, was just how they kind of got their niche, which was initially just the fact that they put out an energy drink, awesome, but it wasn't until they kind of tied themselves to X Gaming and everything else that X Games, I should say, that they really kind of found a way to associate themselves with something that really picked them up to what they're doing. And I mean, it's just amazing what they're doing, and just by becoming that kind of cool affiliated brand to put with all the really fun out there stuff, like they've shotgunned themselves to the top. So I love that, and yet they can still be sued for not giving people wings. So I find that to be hilarious.
Only in America can you get a fucking law case like that through.
Yeah, it was actually the week before I caught up with Matthias, which was the guy from marketing. So it was right after that. So I don't know. That blows my mind, but I guess it's going to happen. Yeah, but this has been awesome. Like, this has been really cool, and this is actually a chance to nerd out about something that I'm really into. Yet, oddly, because most things I obsess about, I learn everything about them, and this is something that I've not actually gotten my head around too much. So it's been very educational for me. I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna write up some really in-depth show notes about this, but do you have anything in particular you want to talk about? Just to finish off, or anything you're doing? Or
no, I think we've crossed everything we do. I'm just really excited about the technology and how it can be used. And the thing that is new and nice, especially about the augmented reality and the virtual reality industry, is it has a real kind of camaraderie between the companies that are doing it and doing it well. There's like a respect and also a knowledge sharing thing that's happening. There's not a lot of really closed off kind of all the trade secrets. You can't know about this thing. I'm not going to let you know what we learned from this. So, big companies sharing openly like what we've learned with our last product means that everyone's next thing they make or every next project gets better and better. Whereas you can often find, especially in the visual effects industry, everyone is so closed.
Very guarded.
So privately, and it comes from they don't want you to know they're making that movie, but you're like, everyone knows there's a movie going right. Why are you hiding it? And what have you done? Are you modeled some stuff? You rendered it in Maya, and you did some Mari, and then you put it through Nuke. And did you track? And yeah. There's no secrets really there to be had. There's some people doing some really clever code, but It comes down to talented artists with enough time, when it comes down to that industry. But VR, so new, there should be loads of secrets, but actually there isn't. People are like, yeah, we learned this thing, or we did that, and you need to do this. This is really good, but this is really bad. And so there's a real positive energy behind the whole, I hate the term, but you could say movement.
But it's great. I mean, for everyone to kind of more positively be moving forward together and saying, hey, I did this. It's like, great, well, I'll get that and, move forward. I mean, you look at all the stories of the 80s with a lot of hardware and computer tech going out. I mean, they had all the homebrew stuff in San Francisco where everyone come in and show the new computer board that they, slap together. I mean, you kind of want that positive reinforcement with what you're doing. And, I think it's awesome. I'm sure it will get to that point eventually where it's, this is a money-making industry, but, the fact that it is such an open-ended, it's like it is a whole other reality. So it's exciting. I mean, where would people go to find out more about you and what you do in Rewind?
Just check us out on rewindeffects.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. I say this to so many people, and you probably have the same thing, I answer my emails. If someone sends me in a message, asks me a question, I'll get back to them. I've got no problem with that. The other thing is we're hiring. So if there's anybody who wants a job in doing something really cool, we're looking for pretty much every type of employee, from kind of modelers and VFX guys through to production, through to marketing, through to installation and interactive tech. I've got to hire someone to go and follow around the Formula One this year, to go to every race.
Okay, so, I'll do it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. I mean, just, again, I think from everything I've seen, you guys create such a positive, fun environment. I mean, that alone would be the biggest selling point, let alone the fact that you guys are doing cool, innovative stuff like all the time.
It sounds corny, but I feel lucky to be able to do what I do. But it's you just kind of ride the wave, put whatever energy you put out into whatever you're doing or whatever company you're with or whatever you're doing, it always comes back. It always comes back. If you're positive things happen. If you're negative things happen. You can't blame someone else. You can't say this, it's so unfair. You can't blame someone else's success for your failure. You have to do well. You have to put it out and do it. So I'm pretty lucky that I've got a lot of good vibes in this office. And I get meet people like you. Another positive person.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate
Pleasure.
it. And let's talk soon.
Yeah, totally. Speak soon. Have a good one.
Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm actually going to put up a bonus episode later this week, which will, I guess, make it into episode 25. Just covering a lot more stuff, because we ended up talking about a lot of really, really cool stuff before we got into the VR. But I just wanted to keep it on point for this episode. But I'm going to put up episode 25 later this week, which will go into a lot more career-related stuff and just a lot of really cool insight that Saul has on other subjects too. So keep an eye out for that. I'll probably post it Thursday. And in addition to that, like I said, Rewind Effects, where Saul works, he's the director of the company and co-founder, he is hiring right now. So if you like what you heard and you want to be a part of these productions, then send an email to them. I'm going to list all of the information on the show notes page as to where to go to reach out to them. So if you go to allanmckay.com, so ALLANMCKAY.com/24 for episode 24. Also, if you're in Paris or you're anywhere in Europe and you want to come over and check it out, I'll be speaking in about 2 weeks' time, the week of March 10. So I think it's March 15 and 16. I've got to check my calendar. But I'll be speaking in Paris at a big masterclass. And if you want to come along, I'm doing 2 different talks. One's going to be on a few recent visual effects productions of mine, as well as another talk on breaking into the industry. So a lot of really good insight into how to hack your career and really make a massive impact in the shortest amount of time. So lots of really vital information in there. It's going to be lots of fun. Now, I'd really love your feedback about this episode, because if this is something that interests you, I have the opportunity to speak with the guys at Oculus Rift, as well as a few other subjects I think would be really fun. Saul has brought so much insight to this, and I love it. So I definitely just want to hear what your thoughts are. Was there a lot that you got from this, and what are some of the areas within the industry you think that VR could really help make that boom? So if you want, please go to the show notes and leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. I read everything and I do my best to reply. So that's it for now, guys. Thanks again for listening. Leave a comment and I'll be back soon. Lastly, next Monday, I'll be putting out another episode, which I guess will be episode 26. And that will be on productivity. I'm going to be putting out a massive solo episode on overtime versus productivity and a lot of productivity hacks. So it's going to be really cool stuff. So another episode later this week with Saul, and then next week I'll be putting out another solo episode on productivity, which I think is a really vital thing that we should all be checking out and getting into, and I can't wait to do that. So that is it, guys. Happy Monday. I'm going to get some coffee. Have a good day.